Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. This is a new year, 2026, and I am, in case you didn't know, Kay Thompson, a principal broker here at Best Real Estate Company. And this is the first episode of the 2026 year of our podcast, Friday Focus. Now, I want to say to you guys that I'm excited about the new year. I've done a lot of thinking about different things in my business, and I used the last few months to make a plan that I think will be viable for me to accomplish some things that I'm planning to accomplish. And also, I'm hoping that some of the plans, or all of them, I should say, of the plans that I have to help you guys are able to come to fruition this year. I've got a list of things that I want to do, which I'll share more about as those things, are closer to coming to fruition. But just know that I do have some things that I want to tweak and make better and expound upon, and I will actually be talking about a few of those things at our first office meeting of the year. I am going to try to get more consistent this year with those. I know I slacked for the last couple of years, but I had gotten a survey a few years ago from you guys, and it told me that you voted to not have as many office meetings, and so that's why I really slowed down on them. That's not to say that I'm going to be putting up a whole bunch of office meetings this year. I am going to work to try to make the office meetings substantive and informative and, hopefully exciting. So we do have our first office meeting scheduled for January the 21st. That's a Wednesday. It's going to be at the Renaissance Bank. That's located at, I believe it is 3750 Poplar Avenue. So for those of you who don't know where that is, it's right there at Poplar, and I believe that's Brookhaven, right across the street from the cemetery. I think it's Forest Hill Cemetery, just off the I-240 loop there. And it's a really nice space. We've had an office meeting there before, and so it's going to be really inviting. We are going to be the guests of Miss Denisha Spearman, who is a loan officer with Renaissance, and she's going to be sharing with us information about the different programs that they have. She'll talk to us about any changes that we need to look out for in terms of lending that are coming up in the near future. You can also come to her and ask her questions that you may have regarding lending. This is something that I strongly recommend that our newer agents do. Whether you're new to the business or just new to this market, Denisha is a good source of information. And so really excited about that. We also are going to have a representative here from Realtor, which is a multiple listing solution. And there are going to be some changes to the way we're going to be able to access MLS data, I believe, in the coming years. And they are a really good solution for us being able to share our data beyond the 5 counties that are listed in the Tennessee MLS. So they're expanding all across the country, and the programs they have is really awesome and dynamic. So I would love for you guys to come out and listen to Miss Deborah or Debbie share with us about that solution. She is coming from a very long way, and she is providing lunch for us. So I hope that we can pack the house for that event. Also at that office meeting, we're going to have Tyler from Echo Title. So for those of you who do business with Echo, you probably noticed that you haven't seen Sean Norseworthy around. He actually retired And so he, before he retired, he came over and introduced us to his replacement. His name is Tyler, and Tyler is super, super awesome. He's been very, very generous in sharing information with us about the things that Echo Title can do for us. And he's been very diligent. And if you guys know me, you know I like diligent people. And so he will also be there sharing some information with us about cybersecurity and how to keep ourselves and our clients safe during the real estate transaction as it relates to that. Also, I am going to make it a point to work in some continuing education credits for us this year at some of our meetings. And like I said, I would rather have a few substantial meetings than to have a bunch of meetings where I'm just kind of rushing you guys through information. So that is one thing that I have vowed to change. And my goal is to do that. And so hopefully you guys can find the meetings more enjoyable and more insightful. And so that's that. The next thing that I want to do is remind you guys in Arkansas that we have until January the 31st to get our realtor fees, NLS fees paid before we're assessed the late fee. So if you haven't done that, I believe we all have, but just because we're getting the reminders, I want to express that to you guys that you make sure and get that taken care of. And that brings me to this other thing. At several times of the year, for Tennessee and Mississippi specifically, because Arkansas is set up a little bit different, how they manage payment for their MLS and access to all the realtor benefits and everything. There are several times a year, 3 times a year, that you're paying those dues, those fees to the boards. And while I understand that sometimes we find ourselves in situations that may not, that may be difficult in terms of finance, it's very important for you to, weigh the consequences of your actions when you are faced with a situation like that and you need to figure out what to do. So we try to make it our business to tell you guys as soon as we know that the MLS fees and everything are coming up. They usually give you a few months to pay those. And I'm not going to get on a soapbox. I just want to say this. If you find yourself in that position where you are trying to decide whether or not to pay your office fees or to pay your realtor board, here at Best Real Estate Company, we have 2 divisions, and that's for every single agent that works here. You have the opportunity to be in the affiliated division, which is for realtors, and then the non-affiliated division, which is for real estate agents. And I do understand the psychological attachment that agents have to these boards, because they kind of make you feel like it's impossible for you to do your business outside of being a member of a board. So I want to share with you guys a little bit about myself. I am a member of 2 boards, but I have 5 real estate licenses. In the other states, I am not a member of the boards in those areas, nor do I choose to be a member. And I'm able to conduct good business independent of those boards. That's something that I actually learned how to do from our founder, Larry Mayall. That's just, a part of the wealth of knowledge and information that he gave me as I, worked with him. And I very much value the education and the experience I got being a member of the non-affiliated division. And so I'm a living witness that it's possible that you can work independent of a board. And I say that to say that if you are find yourself in a position where you have to decide whether you pay the board or pay your office fees, if you decide to pay the board, and you have fallen behind with us, you are running a risk of having your license sent back to the real estate commissions. Of course, everybody's situation is different. Everybody's circumstance is different, and I'm not trying to lump everybody up. But if you find yourself in that position, please give us a call here at the office so that we can help you to understand the options that you have with us. It doesn't make sense for you, though, to pay a bunch of money to a board and you still have this other bill with us, because we actually are the holders of your license. And we use those dues, office fees that you guys pay in order to pay the staff that processes your checks and that's there for you when you have a question and you need to call into the office. We maintain buildings and equipment, and just those fees are a fundamental part of our operation as a collective, and not just the administrators here. So it's very vital that everybody is cognizant of that, and everybody knows that, once a year you can switch. We allow that for you to switch from one division to the other. So, so if you find yourself in that situation, please give us a call so that we can work together to find a solution where everybody wins, because we don't want to send licenses back for non-payment of the office fees, but we, sometimes it's, it's necessary that we make this comment, that we just remind everybody. So that's what I'm doing now. It's just reminding everybody to do that. Don't go MIA on us if we're calling you about your fees that you owe to the office, because we are going to make a decision that is best for everyone involved, including you, when it relates to that. So I'm going to move on from that. I do want to congratulate those people who sold $1 million or more. I did finally get one person in who is going to go to the ball, or to the multi-million-dollar club awards, and I'm very excited for that. So I do want to extend my congratulations to those of you who actually made it into the club, but may not be participating in the festivities that go along with that. And now the last thing that I want to talk to you guys about is forms. It's 2026. Obviously, we have new forms in a couple of states. And it's always important at the end of the year for a broker to look for new forms, because somewhere there's going to be some new stuff, even if, especially if you have multiple states. And so what I kind of wanted to do is, I'm not going to take a really long time and go over these, but what I do want to do is share with you guys some of the information that we have, and about the forms. They are available now. There are forms for Arkansas that have had some changes, and there are also forms for Tennessee. It's not extensive, but they are important changes. And so, without further ado, let me go ahead and get us started with this. Okay, so the first forms that we're going to go over are the Tennessee forms, because with these forms, there's going to become there's a new form that I need to explain altogether, and it's going to be very important that you guys are using these forms, because I'm going to make it a requirement for us in Tennessee, and you will not be able to get your commissions if this form isn't filled out in the appropriate situation. And so I've gone through these with you guys before. You know, the blue writing is the stuff that they've added. The red writing is the stuff that they've taken away. These are the documents that had changes. So we had changes to the exclusive buyer representation agreement, designated agency. We had some changes to the purchase and sale agreement. We have some changes in terminology to the compensation agreement, which was made across various forms. Basically, I can go through that now. In a lot of our forms, they would say listing agent and then selling agent. So they changed the term selling agent to buyer's agent, because I guess the selling agent was confusing people. So they changed that. So you're going to see that happening in a bunch of forms. Well, not a bunch, but these right here. And then we have some additional information added to our additional contract language document, which I introduced to you guys in 2025. We have some changes to the purchase and sale agreement timeline checklist. We have a completely new form, which I was telling you guys about just a few moments ago, that I'm going to require that you guys begin using. And we have some changes to the residential lease and single family dwelling agreement. So let's just go through here real quick. So as you can see, the type of property sought by client, that section is taken out of the buyer's rep agreement. I am so happy that they did this, because when you fill that section out, it actually limits what you're being compensated for in the agreement. So I always skipped over that whole entire section. I left it blank because I wanted to be compensated no matter what type of property I sold my client. And I didn't want to have to write an addendum or make an amendment to change what they were actually buying if that was different from what was described here. So they took that totally out. And in certain places in the contracts, they had client instead of buyer or seller. So they changed those terms as well. So you'll see that throughout several of the documents. As you can see here, there's they took out the word selling broker and they made it buyer broker, as I mentioned. Right here, this information about earnest money is very important. It says brokers authorized to accept a deposit of earnest money trust to be applied to the purchase price for a property. Such deposit is to be held by broker in an escrow or a trustee account, or broker shall direct buyer to send deposit to an authorized third party to hold said funds as set forth in an executed contract for purchase, lease, exchange, or option agreement until dispersed in accordance with the terms of the said agreement. If a third party is holding the earnest money, trust money, parties can can enter into an escrow agreement. And so I do want to make a note here for you guys. We have some agents who are still out there telling their clients to turn their earnest money into Best Real Estate Company. Okay, especially in Tennessee, this is the case. Okay, Best Real Estate Company does not hold earnest money in the state of Tennessee. We have a waiver so that we don't have to do that, and such forth. We don't. So do not have your clients make their earnest money out to Best Real Estate Company, specifically in Arkansas and Tennessee. We do have the option to do that in Mississippi, but it's nuanced, and so I'm going to explain that next. What we really want you to do in Arkansas or in Tennessee is to turn your earnest money in, have your clients turn the earnest money in to the closing attorney, whether it's your closing attorney or the other party's closing attorney. It is acceptable for the buyer to drop off the earnest money themselves, just like they do here. They get they'll get a receipt for one if usually if they take it to the closing attorney, and we're not going to give them a receipt here because we don't want to keep the earnest money. We don't do that. So in the states of Arkansas and Tennessee, have your clients turn their earnest money in to the closing attorney. Okay. In Mississippi, you can turn earnest money in to our office, but like I said, it's a nuanced process. There's a form that needs to be filled out. We have to physically take the earnest money to the bank, and then if you need the earnest money, we have to get a check back from the bank. So it's not something that we can just write out at the desk. So if you want an efficient process and you don't want to delay in your closing because you didn't give us enough time to get the earnest money back, then you also want to turn that earnest money in the state of Mississippi to the closing agent that is either working for your client or the other side, depending on what was agreed to in the contract. I just turn earnest money in to closing whatever the closing attorney is in the contract, based on what my clients agreed to. I never even give them an option to turn it in here. So that's just that. That's that. Here in this section, they're talking about structural conditions and engineering. So sometimes you get you get a home inspection, and the inspector says, "Hey, I think you need to have the foundation checked." Basically, what this is stating is that you need to be doing all of that within the confines of your inspections period. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys there's not a infinite list of structural engineers and people who check like septic tanks and stuff running around. When you're writing your offers, you want to make sure that if that's something that your clients want, that you're giving enough time in order for you to find the proper professional that could check a foundation, or that could check the structural integrity, or that could check the septic or the well or whatever. If you feel like you're going to run out of time, then you need to request an extension of your resolutions period. Okay, that doesn't mean you extend the date on the closing, but you can extend the resolutions period if that is necessary. You write an addendum and you state that. If you guys ever find yourself in that situation and you don't know the right verbiage in Tennessee, we actually have a document with a canned verbiage on it that you can use. But if that doesn't give you the information that, or give you a statement that you think clearly explains what it is that you need to do, then please reach out to me and I will help you to get the right verbiage. I'm very confident that Malcolm would help you do the same if you're a realtor in Mississippi, and Lydia will help if you're in Arkansas. And of course, I can help in all the places as well. So that's just very important. I wanted to point that out. And here they added an extra statement. It says, "Is broker or licensees associated with broker provide names or sources to client for such advice or assistance listed above. Those services and or products are not warranted or guaranteed by us or the agent." So that's very important. Here they just changed the name of the section, so that's not a big deal. They took out this section here for expert assistance because they added this section up here. Okay, and then that pretty much covers it for that. Now then we come down to the purchase and sale agreement. There's a couple of things that I want to point out here. I especially expect you guys to read 82, lines 82 through 86. It says, should buyer fail to comply with section 2A-1 and 2A-2 above, or provide notice as required, seller may make a written demand for compliance via the notification form or equivalent written notice. If buyer does not furnish the requested information within 2 days after such demand for compliance, buyer is considered in default and seller has the right to terminate this agreement. If the seller fails to terminate before the buyer cures the situation, then that right has been waived. Okay, so that's in reference to all of this right here that agents all the time forget exists. And it's usually the space that I go to first when there is a situation with earnest money. So it says within 14 days after the binding agreement, the buyer shall present notification to the seller that the buyer has secured hazard insurance or homeowner's insurance. The buyer has notified the lender of an intent to proceed and has available funds to close. And the buyer has requested the appraisal be ordered and affirms the appraisal fee has been paid. Buyer shall pursue qualification for an approval of the loan diligently and in good faith. All these things right here, okay, is what that statement alludes to. So if your buyer is in default of any of those things, your lender can't give them a denial letter. Well, the lender can give them a denial letter, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the seller is going to let your buyer off the hook. And I read that and have read it 100 times, and it's saved a lot of agents, clients, earnest money. So if I'm reading it, I know that a lot of other people are too. And I'm going to tell you, there's one broker who shall remain nameless, but she and I have gone around and around over the years in a good way about these forms, and she really knows her stuff. So you guys really need to be careful at how you are handling this. And let me say, if it's not written in the contract, then it doesn't apply. Okay? And you can't make a seller consider other things after they have signed and agreed to go with the contract as it is. That is one of the most difficult challenges that we as brokers have to overcome with other people, is when things are forgotten. So make sure that you are reading these documents and make sure that you are doing everything that you're supposed to do and writing in clearly everything that a client is asking you to ask the seller for, so that you can have a smoother transaction. Okay, the same goes with the contingency for financing. Okay, the buyers obligated to close shall not be subject to any financial contingency. Make sure you're not checking that if your client needs financing. Okay, I had a situation with that last year as well. And then so that there are some good things in here that they have added to clear up for us, and I think we needed that. They have changed, like I said, these things right here on certain documents. They're just changing the title. This contract language just had this addition at the bottom about open houses. And then the purchase and sale timeline checklist has that change. And then this is the new document. It is a compensation addendum / amendment. Okay. This compensation addendum or amendment is entered into blah, blah, blah. And it basically outlines what the seller is going to pay in terms of commission, or percentage, commission dollars or percentage. And then it says what the buyer is also going to pay. Now, this document is really there for transparency. As long as all the parties are aware, a buyer, a buyer and a seller can both pay on a transaction. They can both, pay compensation to the buyer's agent as long as they are aware that that's what's happening. Okay, but I think that this document is excellent. It's an excellent document that could be added to the contract when you are working with someone like, say, an EXP, where they don't use buyer's rep agreements and things of that nature. This document is a document that you could fill out and attach to your purchase and sale agreement, to clearly outline what the compensation is going to be, to whom and from whom. And it requires a seller signature or a buyer signature, okay? Now, I'm going to skip on over here to the Arkansas forms. Arkansas has a guide as well, and I will attach these to the email that I send, which shows the with the link to the podcast. They have a nice note there from their risk reduction committee. They tell you about the forms changes process, and then they have little boxes here that kind of show you what the previous version was of a section of a document, and then what the updated version is. And so they had a minor change to the agency representation document. And so they changed a section from 3A to 4A, which was not a big deal. And then they updated the paragraphs for the buyer agency where it says seller acknowledges listing firm is employed by the seller and selling firm is employed by the buyer. So they just updated the paragraph sections there. They took out a whole paragraph here in the bottom, okay, of for canceling. So they have some changes there for cancellation. If a seller decides he wants to cancel his listing agreement with an agent, is basically saying that it can be canceled without cause, providing written notice to the seller, and then the same with the seller. Of course, we know that depends on the situation and how much work has been done. So they have these changes in here. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all of them because I really wanted to make sure that I do all that I can to keep our podcast this year right around 30 minutes, and I have hit the 30-minute mark. So I don't have anything else. I just want to remind you guys to be at our office meeting on January 21st. From 11:30 to 1:30. I've sent out a couple of emails. I'll send another reminder this week. And just know that this podcast and the announced emails are the best methods of communication from your brokerage to you. So please make sure that you are checking your emails regularly and that you are staying abreast of all that is going on with us here at Best Real Estate Company. And with that being said, I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a safe weekend, and if you can, sell something. Ta-ta.